7 to, this kind of a disappointing loss. And, these are the highs and lows of the playoffs, especially when you get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And so we got to regulate all that stuff. We got to see it for how it is, not worse than it is, as I just said. And we got to make things better, make the things better that need to be better. And that's pretty much it.
You talked about the run to start the game and several runs back and forth. I know that's part of the playoffs, but how can you manage, aside from calling a timeout, how can you try to manage those and kind of keep those as small as possible?
Well, timeouts you have for a reason, and so that's one tool. And look, we're 14 games into the playoffs now, and even our first-time playoff guys, are becoming pretty seasoned in a pretty short period of time. So, we went through some really bad games. Game 1 in Milwaukee was a stinker. Game 5 in Milwaukee was awful. Game 5 in New York was terrible. And so, we've talked about the kinds of things that you got to do to move on, and keep going and keep concentrating on the things you want to do, and not think about the things that you don't want to do, and keep it as positive as possible. So, this was tough. This was tough last night, no question about it. But we're excited to get back out there tomorrow.
Great 36 for Tatum, and he kind of got going in overtime. And you talked about how hard they are to match up with. But what did you think about how you guys did against him specifically last night?
Those guys are great players. I mean, Tatum, Brown, Holiday. These guys are all, I think they're all on the Olympic team. It's just, they're great players, and we've just got to do the best that we can to make it as hard on them as possible. And some of that is defensive stuff, and some of that is how we play offense. And so, we talked about some of the adjustments that we need to make for the second game today, and we'll do the best we can to put those things to work tomorrow.
Right. One thing some of the players have mentioned is the fact that the Celtics aren't really a turnover forcing team. They're just a solid defensive team. They try to stay as solid as possible for as long as possible. How important is going deep into the clock, being comfortable going into multiple actions in this series?
Well, we had 22 turnovers. 17 of the 22 were when the shot clock was an average of 15.1 seconds. So, there were only five possessions where the clock was under 10. And so, as you mentioned, with the clock's at 15, we get a chance to keep working the possession and keep trying to make it hard on them. We totally lost those opportunities. So, I don't know the number of turnovers that were unforced, but a lot of them were, and that stuff is stuff that's fixable.
Rick, they've talked a little bit about being willing to live with some of the twos you guys shoot, as long as you're not getting threes off. How important is the three-point attempts that both teams take in this game? They were able to get 45 off last game, near 35.
Yeah, I mean, the three-point line is a big part of this series for sure. And what you just said, of their feeling about defending us, we would say something similar to them. Everybody wants to make it about, taking difficult two-point shots instead of giving threes in the rim. And so, but it's hard. I mean, they've got a great team. I mean, these guys have dominated the league from start to finish this year. So, it's a really difficult task. But we're looking forward to another shot at it tomorrow.
Rick, you've been, you've admitted the sort of praise or just like acknowledge of the Celtics season and how good they've been, last night and tonight. But also, the guys all believe like we can hang with this team and go about it. How did you sort of go about that messaging to your team to say, hey, they're really good, but you guys are able to hang with it, or just was that even a focus for you coming into this series?
Well, we competed well against them this year, with the exception of the first game that was here. We got blasted. And so the other 4 games, we won a couple of them. They won a couple of them. And so our guys know they can compete with any team in the NBA. Boston just happens to be exceptionally better based upon their record and the statistical things that they've done this year and all that kind of stuff. So we respect them, and and we know that we're going to have to play at an extreme high level, you know, to win games in this series.
In the first half, it looked like they got out in transition a couple times, and then also as they were starting possessions, the coaching staff was trying to motion everyone up to get the pressure going. How do you feel like you guys' pressure improved defensively as the game went on?
Well, that's got to be a constant for us, and you know, we looked at some of that today, and you know, our thing is we've gotten to this point by fighting for every centimeter and millimeter of the court for 48 minutes a game. I mean, that's how it's got to be. So going into game 2, you know, we're just going to have to be more defiant about it, and we're going to have to do better.
Rick, last night you had mentioned that no one cares about 80s basketball, or today's players.
Well, I do.
I know you've been around for a couple minutes now. What's allowed you to adapt to the modern player and the modern game so well?
Well, I had a teenage daughter that just turned 20 a week and a half ago, and so, you know, I've learned a lot about this generation because you have to study it. And look, I mean, I love today's game. You know, a lot of the way our team plays right now is the way our team in 1986 played. You know, we were a team that trusted the pass and believed in each other and put the trust in our in the players, you know, to create the shots. The point guards, Dennis Johnson called all the plays back in those days. Tyrese Haliburton calls them all now. You know, and so, you know, there are things that translate, but I do know that the 80s was a long time ago. You know, and these guys weren't around. You know, and so you can't assume that these guys have all studied all the matchups. You know, all the finals matchups of, you know, the mid 80s, and so, you know, that's just me paying homage to the fact that that's a reality.
Hey Rick, I know a lot of the times in situations like this you might focus on the emotions of the players, but you've been in all types of different scenarios. What have you learned about the differences in the playoffs, about maybe having blowout losses like those game 5s compared to last night, and how you approach that in the 48 hours leading into the next game?
Well, we've played 14 games now in the playoffs this year. Virtually every game has been different. Virtually every game, you know, from 1 to 2 all the way through 6 against Milwaukee and through 7 against New York, every game was somehow pretty significantly different. Emotions can get high and low, but the thing that we constantly talk to our guys about is keeping emotions as level as possible. We want to celebrate things, but we got to move on quickly to the next task. And so, you know, after a game like last night, you know, we're just really looking forward to getting back out there again and having another chance to compete.
Rick, at the beginning of the season, you talked about an emotional conversation you had with TJ about perhaps his role being more limited than it had been before. How has his attitude and work ethic served him from that conversation into what he's doing now?
It wasn't long after that he was right back in the mix. I mean, you know, and that was going to happen. He's done that everywhere he's been. And so, but you know, this is all part of the evolution of an NBA season. You know, as a coach, as you know, in a leadership position, you've got to be open to the fact that things are probably going to change. You got to be open-minded to everything. You know, but then you got to make final decisions. And so, you know, I don't know what the exact point in time was, but it's pretty early in the season where it's pretty clear that TJ needed to be one of our rotation guys. And you know, now he's established himself, you know, pretty firmly as a top 7 or 8 guy on our team. You know, and so, you know, our bench guys are like an extension of our starters. You know, and that's, you know, our depth has been one of the reasons that we've gotten here.
We're going to pivot from the playoffs, but tonight they're announcing all NBA teams. What would it mean to Ty to be a part of that, both for him and for his finances?
Well, listen, I have no doubt that he's going to be all NBA. I'd be surprised if he wasn't first or second team. So I don't even know why this should be a conversation in anybody's mind. But I expect him to be all NBA, and he absolutely deserves it.
I had a question about Tyrese as well, and I haven't seen him all year, but I know second half he had the hamstring, and even in the Milwaukee series he was questionable for a little bit. But it looked like to me that he was just moving pretty well in the game last night and in the New York series. Does it feel like he's gotten stronger as the playoffs has gone on, or how would you sort of assess that?
He's doing well. He's doing well, and I try to watch minutes as carefully as I can. Playoff games, you got to play guys the amount of minutes you got to play guys, but we try to get our bench guys in the game early, get them involved, rotate guys in and out as needed. Tyrese has done very well, and he had a back spasm issue earlier on, and lately, that's resolved. He's doing well. So today, tomorrow is just recovery for tomorrow night, and so that's what we're concentrating on, and that's what he's concentrating on. But he's doing well.
He does so much for the offense, and it's not all scoring. We know he facilitates, does everything like that. How have you seen him work through his first long playoff run and work out when to be that aggressive scorer and when to get everyone else involved?
Well, pretty clear to me he's doing pretty well with it. There are adjustments you got to make. Some nights it's not going to be about him getting a big scoring number, So, but he's developed a great feel for when we need, that kind of aggression to score, and when we need, the floor general, the playmaker, the play caller, and the facilitator. So, in today's game, you can't be an effective NBA player if you're not a threat to score from, your spots on the floor. So he's always going to be a threat, and he's done a great job of striking the balance.
Thanks, Coach.